Nichol, I'm very excited to be with you today. A quick bio about Nichol. Nichol Ng is CEO and Managing Director of X Inc. Private Limited. It's a parent of a group of companies that has been in the food business since the 1930s. It was her passion for food as well as desire to deliver service with a heart that drove Nichol to take over the family business. Nichol oversees about 200 employees, more than 7,000 products, over 4,500 customers, and an annual turnover of over Singaporean 88 million. In addition, about 10 years ago, Nichol co-founded the Food Bank Singapore. It's a charity which redistributes excess foods to more than 300 nonprofits that support over 300,000 underprivileged. And for her work here, Nichol was named as one of the 10 honorees in the Peak Magazine's Peak Power List 2016, Forbes Asia 2017 Heroes of Philanthropy, and Harper's Bazaar Power List 2018. In the personal side, Nichol is happily married to her partner of 24 years, and she believes that the best legacy to leave her 4 kids is not money, but her values. So happy, Nichol, for you to be here. And there's just an amazing career that I'm excited for you to share with us. So let's start with our first question, which is, tell us the story from upbringing to now. How did you get to where you are now?
I think my entire life feels a little bit like a story. My grandfather came from China in 1934 in seek of a better life after his first wife passed away. So what I always share is that our business have kind of been around even pre-World War One, and even before Singapore gained independence in 1965. For those of the people who know me, they would know me as a busybody. So I'm known as a busybody from young because I love to raise my hands and legs. So in Cantonese, there's this phrase that it said "举手舉腳," which is raise hand, raise leg. And the meaning basically is that, I'll volunteer myself for everything possible. And that's been a part of me since young. And it was actually my maternal grandmother that spotted that talent of mine. And in fact, she left me a very good statement to live by. She said that it's a lot more of a blessing to be able to give than it is to take. And that has lived with me throughout my 40 odd years.
That magic line of it's better to give than to receive, to be a servant leader.
Mm.
It seems like the through line, even as you've done the food business, it's much more than just profit, but actually about service and in a way that helps underprivileged youth and underprivileged just in general in Singapore.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, as you think about your leadership now as CEO, how does that look with serving your people?
So I do need to share that our family has been through plenty of ups and downs, including during 97, we were bankrupt. So during the Asian currency crisis. So my dad basically like lost nearly everything about the business because it grew to a big empire in the early 90s with a lot of trading businesses and all that as well. And I was there when the banks came to seize the house. And basically, the guard was there with that piece of seizure paper. And my dad was in the office, and my mom, who was a housewife all her life. And I remember I was like 19 years old. And so that leaves a mark on you because you're still an undergrad, right? And you were given 30 minutes to pack your stuff, and everything else is the bags. Although our house wasn't like a huge bungalow or something, it was my parents' matrimonial home, but that was the family house that I was born into. To be able to go through that, and having come from the downs, and seeing how my dad has survived the bankruptcy as well, in fact, I feel that it has prepared me to be the leader of who I might need to become in today's uncertain world. Because as you see it, right, one of the things that I always feel that it's a great blessing for me is that my parents always brought me up. We were pampered, but we were never spoiled. So when, lack of a better word, when the bad stuff hits the fan, right? I took it upon myself and I told my dad, I said, why don't we just downgrade to a government housing or like, it's okay, and As long as the family's intact, it's fine. And therefore, I always feel that it's a blessing now because my dad could ring fence that very small food business that my grandfather left behind while the whole entire empire collapsed. And I have the privilege of continuing my grandfather's business, although I've never met him. Yeah, so he passed on before my parents got married. So therefore, coming back to when you mentioned about the food bank and all that, I took it upon myself that if I was able to revive the business to some kind of a better state, from the bankruptcy and the debts and everything else, I vouched that I will give back to society. And therefore, that's what we did. So in 2007, I basically set up the group that you see now and I acquired the family business. So I cleaned up the debts, helped my late father pay off a lot of his personal debts and everything else. And I think one thing is interesting, right? A lot of people always see that, oh yeah, it's a family business, it's a hand-me-down, you always see the better side of things. And therefore, I make it a point to share my story as a form of encouragement, maybe to other people, especially who are in family-related businesses, no matter how big or small, because only if you can go through these tough times will you see the better days that you have today. And now is not a better day, I must say. It's 2022. It's likely the toughest year that we have faced. Because I think in our generation, we've never seen such a time. 2 years of pandemic and the war happening, the entire world's on the verge of collapse. As a business owner, I'm seriously very worried of what 2022 is going to bring. I'm getting very worried for mankind, actually. Yeah, so not just my business, but in general.
So let's talk. There's a lot of really juicy things you shared there, Nicole. And I
Mm.
want to get into this idea of risk because to see your dad and your family have this notice given to you at 19 years old and to work through that pain through and then promising that you would give back. I mean, you have made that come true. And it's similar, though perhaps harder now that this is happening through the world of a
Mm.
test. Because of this experience, I now have these skills, I have this perspective that has allowed me to see the business through, but also be prepared for this next wave of challenge.
I told myself that I will not want my mom to go through another bankruptcy if there should be something happening to the business of that scale ever again. So it's like that sense of responsibility that I've put on my shoulders to say that because I've got employees that followed me for my dad's time, right? And my longest serving employee has been with me for 46 years. It's with the family for 46 years, and I wasn't even born yet. So it's like, I can't possibly let the team go through this again. So I told everybody that I'm going to make magic happen so that we will survive 2022. And sometimes in days when it gets very bleak, I think as a business leader or even as the head of the household, sometimes even as a mom, right? You need to show that sense of positivity and be an inspiration to the people around you, even when things are really difficult. In the world that we live in right now, my sensing is that the children, the employees, the team, people need a lot more inspirational leaders to look up to because there's a lack of them. Like in the past when we were growing up, there were people like Mother Teresa, for example, or someone that is like, like that's there, a wholesome figure. But I think in the complicated world today, like, I mean, we've got kids, we've got girls, they don't have similar role models. And therefore, sometimes as parents, I feel it is so important that we become that role model to them. I'm just very happy that my children see me as that.
When you reflect on childhood, Nicole, about myths, here are things that I learned either from grandma, from my mom, from my family society, and they ended up maybe not being true. And particularly about how to be successful, how to become, your CEO. What myths did you learn as a kid?
I think in Asian culture, especially in modern Asian culture, and especially for women in Singapore and very developed cities, right? We carry on our shoulders both the need to be perfect in every sense of the word. I mean, all of us excelled in school. We're very lucky to have equal opportunities in the workplace, in school. I mean, unlike the developing countries that might not have that equality. But at the same time, we carry ourselves in that Asian way where we feel that we still have to be good as a mom, and if you do get married, be a great wife, and above it all, look like you're so put together, like you just popped out of bed, like the way it is. And I guess it's along the way that I learned that you don't have exactly to be perfect or put together, and it's okay to be vulnerable sometimes. And it's through your vulnerability that shows people the imperfection that you display shows the strength in you as well. And since you talk about childhood, right? I often share something as well that I suffered from eating disorder from a very young age. And since I was 5 or 6, because I'm a much bigger girl than my peers, I'm much taller, I've got big bones and things like that. My relatives used to compare, like every Chinese New Year, they would say, hey, you seem to have put on weight, or like you're stealing your brother's food, and it's innocent comments. But there's always this streak there. And but I've learned from that I will not want to say that to any children or anybody for that matter, because I suffered from bulimia and signs of anorexia as well for a good 20 something years since I was 11. I was abusing laxatives, slimming pills, trying to nearly starve myself to death. The longest duration without food is 5 days, so I can join the army. Yeah, and all kinds of abuse nearly left me with a very big reason that I can't get pregnant easily, because when you're growing up in puberty, it does things to you when your hormones are all over the place. So 20 odd years. And again, there was a stigma. Back then, in I think the early 2000s, help for eating disorder wasn't as prevalent in Asia yet. Maybe in the States, a lot more centers were coming up. But the moment I found my doctor, and again, this was the busybody in me, I realized that there wasn't a support group system in Singapore. There was no facilities, there's no support group. So I started the support group for eating disorders. And I became like kind of like the poster girl in the media to talk about it, because they don't feel that's an Asian problem. They always felt that it was a Western problem. So when I spoke about it, and I said that it's not about the figure, it's not about the size, it's not about the weight. It's a form of addiction. It's just that we use food as that form of addiction, right? To control our lives. And it comes back to the point that I was making just now, that the myth is that we all need to be perfect. So a lot of the Asian girls, we study harder, we need to get all A's, good grades and stuff like that. The sense of need to be perfect has caused the eating disorder. So sometimes when I have opportunities till today, I always share with everybody around me, because if you're a parent, and if you're listening in and you spot that your daughter or your son is suffering from something like that, which is a mental illness, you should seek help as early as possible. So now, whenever I have the opportunity, I'll tell everybody, like, please get out of it as soon as possible, because if not, this mental illness does not exactly leave you. So I would say that I'm 10% still in the woods sometimes.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'd also love to push on the turning point, because often you're like, wow, you were in the media, you told stories, and now you're sharing now. But how did you go from here's this sense of perfection, then having the disorder for eating, and then going to the doctor? What was the turning point that got you to say,
Yes.
it's time to get help? It's time to change my mindset.
I remembered clearly the day when I woke up and I went to the toilet and I put blood, like the whole toilet bowl was full of blood. And because I was abusing laxatives, like 20, 30 laxatives a day. So I knew for more than 10, 12 years, right, what I've been doing to my own system. So I was so afraid that my intestines would come out. So I told my colleagues that time I was working in my first job, which is not in the company, I was working in a media company. And I told my colleagues, because I was very open about it, they realized I was eating funny. I said, I need help, because I couldn't find the right doctor to cure me, right? So I was so thankful that one of my colleagues recommended me to see her GP, who subsequently recommended me to the Institute of Mental Health, which was where the center was.
Mm.
And I waited 2 months to see that specialist. And so the one of the turning points was that really the physical impact when you start seeing bleeding and really bad changes to yourself, you start to wake up a little bit that because my greatest wish was to be a mom. I said, if the eating disorder rips me of that, right? Like, I want to be so upset. So I said, I got to get well for myself so that I can achieve my dream. So that was one. And the second turning point, which I remembered very clearly, was when I attended the first support group. And there was this young girl beside me, like the reasons, that you get into this eating disorder. And she said that, oh, because I'm very lonely, I look at the cupcake, I talk to it, and I eat it. That is like, I am so lucky because I'm so loved. I'm surrounded by my parents love me. I've got great friends. I've been with my hubby for so long. And, the support network is so strong. So what has it not going for me to push me to recover? I need to get well because I think with my mental ability, I'm able to maybe encourage others to get well as well.
I'm hearing also there's a sense of community as here's my people that I can be really open with and ask for help.
Mm,
That's
yeah.
sometimes I find that growing up for myself, the narrative I had was be strong, you don't need help. And that you
Mm.
actually ask for help and we're so vulnerable to share this is what's going on. It's just a power move. And
Yeah.
I often think too, maybe that's a Chinese culture or Singaporean
Yeah.
culture piece. I'm not sure that's really a Filipino culture piece.
Mm,
We're more
mm,
individualistic or maybe even Western.
mm,
But that's beautiful. And then the second is that there's an other side to it. You had stakes in the ground that you weren't willing to risk. And that
mm.
clarity allowed you to do the work because
Yeah.
you're not going to treat this as, okay, Nichol, let me give you an eating plan. Because that's how I approached it when I was figuring out food. Write down what you ate, portion control,
Yeah.
take a pause. And you're like, no, it's a mental health issue.
Yeah.
Let's treat it
Mm,
as such. And I'm not sure we
mm,
talk about it that way.
yeah.
So it's really powerful. So, Nichol, tell me, as a busybody, did you have in your dreams, besides being a mother, also wanting to be CEO? Did you have that as a young kid?
Mm, no, so because of the crisis that we went through, there was never a succession plan, and neither were there any plans at all for any third generation to come back to help to modernize the business. But I've always wanted to own my own business. And I remember when I was 17, when I was in college, I still have that with me. I actually designed a fashion cafe where you will sell clothes in the center of the cafe, and then everybody was having coffee around that. And then the other dream that I have was to have a cooking school for juniors, as in for little kids. Because I feel that nowadays, the children are so wired up. They don't have that finishing school. I still have that wish of starting a finishing school where we can put the boys and the girls to learn to be self-independent from a very young age, to learn how to sew, to learn how to cook, but basically just sustain themselves instead of being like served hand and foot, that kind of thing.
I have no doubt, Nicole, if you want to do it, it'll happen.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, as someone who's been in education for so long, that we've removed things like, I believe they called it home economics or some sort of a home type of class where they would
Yeah.
practice. I've heard things like, what is it like to balance a checkbook? What does parenting look like? Here's a fake baby. Let's try to burp it so we're more clear on what parenting means. Let's try to cook something. And I'm not sure where we get that education. I think hopefully
Mm.
your parents teach you, but as we strip down education in schools to math and
Yeah.
reading, we
Yeah.
also and even take away music and art. There's these other
Mm.
skills that where do we get them?
I wanted to share something with you on education. So, in fact, I just came back from a trip. I was invited to have an audience with the Dalai Lama.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a last minute trip, and I just arrived this morning, like exactly 12 hours ago. And it was, I just got invited, he just recently started receiving people again. The point about education that he made was quite impactful. One thing that's lacking in the system right now, education system, is a module on empathy and compassion, which should be the basis of everyone's education. So if every one of us just is a little bit kinder, a lot of the problems that we see today will not exist. So it's a very simple thought. And that really got me thinking because in school you don't you don't have a module on that. You have social studies, you study about history, and all, but you don't have a module on empathy and compassion. And it was such a powerful, simple statement, such a simplistic philosophy. And so, therefore, I feel that our education system globally might need to change. In fact, I mean, with all the riots and chaos that's happening all around the world, actually, the world, what we really need now is just some kind of kindness.
I'm floored, Nicole, that you just saw the Dalai Lama and
Yeah.
really happy about this idea of empathy. And really, we're talking
Mm,
love. Like, how can we
yes.
be love, show love, and also love
Mm,
ourselves? Because I find
mm,
that that's the
yeah.
tension. I strive and have eating issues and
Yeah.
constantly trying to chase things and then maybe not nice to people. And at the root
Mm,
of it, do I love me? Do I love
yeah. Are you
others?
kind to yourself? Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm.
So, because you saw the Dalai Lama, anything else that you want to share from that amazing visit?
There were 20 of us. He is a very kiddish 87-year-old man, and he shared his views about having seeing humankind as a single race, stripped off of all religion, of all races, of nationalities. Even we're just 1.7 billion humankind, right? Like in the world. So he was just saying if we can all see ourselves as one, because he said literally, if you strip everybody down to the naked bodies, right? I mean, with the exception of color or skin tone, everybody's the same. And then the second thing is there were children who also visited him on that meeting. And one of them was a 7-year-old girl, and the way he communicated with them, he mentioned something very powerful. And as a parent, that brought me to tears. He said, we're all making the world a better place now, not for me, but for the children. And they are the constant inspiration of why we should make this world a better place. So, what can we do, collectively as parents, as business owners, as thought leaders, right, to make this a better world for the younger generation?
It's interesting how, with all the complicated philosophies and mindfulness techniques and different practices, that it could come down to whether we can be kid like and simplify
Yeah.
things to are we kind to each other and can we leave this world? I mean, even let's do no harm, the old Boy
Yeah,
Scout
exactly.
rule. Can we not make it worse?
Correct.
That would be great. There are maybe times in your career when you were trying to figure out what it would really take to be successful at the top.
Mm.
Were there any particular stories or moments when you're like, wow, I didn't realize that I needed to be this person or I needed to learn this lesson?
I constantly remind myself that our company is very small in the whole scheme of things. We are still an SME. But the different innovations and improvements that we can make for our company might also be applicable to the industry. So again, this is a busybody thing. Because I said, if I'm taking so much effort to improve myself, is there anything that I can do to improve the ecosystem that I'm in? So actually a lot of and this thought actually came, I think now about 10 years ago. Because, every day we're so tired chasing for the dollar, making all the improvements, setting up the computers and all that kind of thing. Then I suddenly had a thought, like, what if whatever that I am doing can also have ripple effect on the rest of my peers, and it's a very unselfish thing. The more we share, the more they can improve and the more the industry improves. So now every project that I'm doing is trying to improve whether the restaurants can be more profitable, do they have a better way of using robotics to maybe make their lattes? So how can I improve the world and the ecosystem that I'm in so that at the end of the day, yes, I will make more money, hopefully, by providing all these services. But the ultimate goal is that how can I help my clients, my business partners, my employees, for example, improve themselves? So our company, and I drew inspiration from my grandfather actually, is that our value statement is very clear, is that we put a thought into everything that we do. And the thought, it comes from a Chinese word called "si," yeah, which is made up of two Chinese characters. The top one means field, and the bottom word means heart. So it's like you grow whatever is in your heart and whatever makes sense to you. You need to put a thought into everything, every person that you touch. And if you start doing that, you see things from a different lens altogether. Yeah, like why is my colleague, acting like that today, right? But you put a thought, maybe she has had a bad day, a fight with her husband or whatever else. And I've lived with that philosophy the moment that I reinvented my family business or to modernize it. So I decided to keep the Chineseness or the Asian roots of it all. Although on the surface we look like we're an ultra modern company, but the root of it all is that we're just humans and I want to keep that cultural aspect. Yeah, the human touch.
This human touch of being able to pause and
Mm.
think, what's another perspective? How can they be human too? That there's not
Yeah.
necessarily malintention. The theme I hear, one of the themes, Nichol, through line through your story is just this idea of collective, wanting to
Mm.
serve others, wanting to make things better for now, for the children, even competitors. And
Yeah.
as an American, Nichol, I don't hear people talk like that. And so I'm curious, I mean, because I'm like helping a person who's competing against me, right? Why would I do that? It's not, I don't, we just don't think that way. So I'm curious, is
Mm.
that a family value? Is that a cultural value? Is it a Singaporean value? Where did you learn that?
I think that was born out of frustration. So I'll just give you a very quick example. Like my company embraced technology very early on. So we wanted to go like digital e-invoicing and all that kind of thing, like asking the clients, can you please don't call me to place orders, but use my online platform and things like that. But then I realized that my peers were very slow to adapt to technology. And therefore, the customers were saying, hey, your competitor doesn't need me to do this or like log in or place your orders and things like that. Then that's when I realized that if I don't get people around me to improve, they become stumbling blocks to my own improvement.
Hmm.
So, yeah, and a lot of times, even my clients, because they are so comfortable pre-COVID with all the sales and revenue that they have, they were very slow to change. So, in fact, I was secretly happy that COVID actually happened because it was genuinely a wake-up call, and the entire world was on an overdrive, especially in Singapore. We're always like gunning for the dollar, and I consistently asked, I said, why are we chasing for higher GDP, higher, everything higher, like bigger dollars and everything? Why can't we, even as a company, take a moment to pause? Maybe it's time to just pause, reflect, and see what's out there. Are we doing the right things? Are we chasing the dollar for the right reason as well? And I feel that the pandemic gave the industry the opportunity to pause, reflect, and stop being so arrogant because good days are not here all the time. And the other thing back to the human touch really is we have evolved with technology too much, I feel. A lot of the services now, it's like you either talking to a chat bot, like even if I called someone for like help, right? I don't know if I'm talking to a real person on the hotline or is that person a chat bot, right? And I think in the service industry for hospitality, you can't do away without the human touch. So the biggest challenge that I face right now is how do I humanize technology to continuously be engaged with my clients because it's impossible. I get maybe a Filipino chef or a Chinese chef, for example, to not call me and ask me for something, right? Because they still want to hear that human voice. They want to like banter, sometimes complain a little bit, but with technology, there's no room. So like now you order from Amazon, what do? They just send you an e-voucher. "Oh, sorry, Miss Annalisa, for the delay. Maybe I'll give you a discount on your next order." But there is no human touch anymore. I want to retain that human touch, the heart of it all.
It's interesting that it's like from our grandparents' days where everything was done so humanly, and then now it's through robots. And
Mm,
where can we come back to ourselves? Because you can be mean as a robot and to another
yeah.
robot, but it's harder
Mm,
when you see the humanness in us. And can
yeah.
we pause and
Mm,
see there's another option?
mm,
So, with that, Nichol, I want to pivot to the
mm,
idea of personal life. You're a boss mama, and I'm curious, as you have so many responsibilities as a busy mom, as a CEO, as all of these leadership roles you've taken outside of the company, how are you able to thrive as all of these roles and to be a person who gives? How are you able to make it all work?
I genuinely sleep 4 hours and I eat one meal. So that saves up some time. The second thing that I do is that I still use an old school checklist every day, like a to-do list. And my inbox is always cleared at the end of the day. And anything that's left behind, it means that it's my to-do for tomorrow. So I thrive in the striking out, like it's like a homework style, like, okay, I've completed that. And that has done me well because, and what I do is I have a checklist for my husband, I have a checklist for my kid, number one, number two, number three, number four, my mom, my household, each of my subsidiaries. So that's how I manage to package it. But I think the other thing is how I've managed to cope with it is that sometimes I'm just being very honest. Annalisa, sometimes I'm very honest about maybe how my child is doing. I feel that when you need to, like when I see my friends say, oh, my kid is scoring this grades, and how it is, and I choose to be very truthful to say that, hey, my child suffers from ADHD, for example, or like, a central auditory processing issue, for example. And the more honest I am, I feel that I carry less weight in my mind because I don't have to reimagine myself like, oh, today I'm talking to Annalisa and the last time I spoke to her, I was like this.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes by being very candid and honest with everybody around you, both the good and the bad, I don't have to pretend as much and I don't have to put on that facade as much. And therefore, it helps me to juggle everything. Because everybody knows that if I talk to Nicole, she gives it as it is. I don't sugarcoat things. It gets things done sometimes. Still being nice, but it's just that directness have helped me to juggle a lot of the issues as well. And the other thing, being a boss mama, right? I realized that from the moment that I can't give up my career, right? Because I have that responsibility and to continue the business and things like that. Um, I have to trust the people around me, the support network that I have. So if my mom is there, my mom is relatively young. She's in the first half of her 60s, right? So if I trust her to help me watch over the kids, if my husband is not around, then I would need to kind of like not have such tight control over how I want my child to be fed or how my child
Mm.
to, and as a mom, sometimes, especially first time moms, you imagine that the bathtub needs to be like that, the water needs to be, there's a lot of things, right? And every mom is different. So I told myself, I said, I got to cut my mom some slack so that I cut myself some slack because she has genuine love for the kid, right? That's for sure. And I'm very sure I can trust her to bring the kid up to the best of her ability when I'm not around. The same thing in Singapore, we're so lucky, right? We have very affordable domestic help. And that's something that I never take for granted. But yet again, the magic is that you need to trust that help. And so if you hire the right person and you trust her, and then you just give her the rules, right? That little box that she can go around, but everything else, you just trust her to do her best. And sometimes by trusting them, creates that confidence between each other that, mom or whatever, trust me to do the best, and that expectation will actually make them perform even better in all sense of the word. But that's something that I live by for the last 10 years since I became a mom.
I hear a clear, I know who I am, and I'm the same person through all of the different roles I play. I hear a release perfectionism from myself and also release perfectionism on others. I'm going to be clear on what the boxes, the rules are, but the rest, I am not going to be crazy. And I'm going to release control and trust. And the other piece I heard was there's a sense of here's my system, here's my lists. I cross them off day by day. I'm in the present, and I try not to spend a ton of time worrying so much about the future. Just do what I can today, clear my list, and then focus on the next thing.
Yeah.
So, in addition, Nichol, because I have you,
Mm.
any other advice you give to a mom leader about how to be a boss at work, family, and life?
I think it's important sometimes to trust your gut feeling.
Mm.
Women have very strong sixth sense, especially moms. We have that. Sometimes we have a notion about certain things. We feel it in ourselves, especially for women, I feel. And sometimes you should trust that gut feeling. Sometimes we doubt ourselves a little bit too much, because I feel that it is that gut that you may have, or that extra EQ that you may have. So like when I interview someone, and I sense that that person coming in like kind of carrying some baggage, I would just kind of probe a little bit. And I feel that that has played to my advantage, because I brought people closer to me, because I live with my gut feeling that I think she's having a bad day. I think this guy is like this. And so sometimes just learn to trust that instinct that you may have. You might not be 100% right all the time, but that's really one thing that women may not live with enough. And the other thing which is important is live every day with passion. And if you enjoy and you make that day enjoyable for yourself, and pick the little moments, right, that you can indulge in. Like for me, it's just that simple black cup of espresso in the morning. It just really lifts my mood. Or that crazy drive, like 6:30, I send my kids to school, because we start school really early in Singapore. 6:30 drive. Yeah, my kids are up by 5:45 in the morning. They're in school. School starts at 7:25. So that school drive, blasting the music, enjoying the day, that really makes my day as well. But just choose the moments that you should indulge yourself in.
So much intentionality, Nichol, in your life, from waking up through your systems for your family and your work. And
Mm.
it's great to see how deliberate it is. And yet also create space.
Mm.
So with that, let's move to lightning round questions.
Mm.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Cooking or takeout?
Cooking.
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
Climb a mountain.
Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
Yes, all the time.
How would you rate your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Mariah Carey?
9.5. I've won talent times before.
Oh, wow. Recent book you read?
CEO excellence. Yeah.
What's your favorite way to practice self-care?
Taking an extra minute in the shower.
What's a really good professional development that you've done?
It's an etiquette class. So this I took very much earlier on, even in my school days. My school actually provided for it. So they taught us how to wear heels, what's your body shape, what's your color. It was free to us. And so basically to embrace the femininity that you are from young, and learn how to love yourself.
What's your definition of a boss mama?
A boss mama is someone who knows her mind and she speaks it as it is, but yet with tender, loving care.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Don't beat yourself up so much.
And where can we find you, like LinkedIn or anywhere else like that?
Yeah, on LinkedIn.
And do you have a final ask, recommendation, or any parting thoughts for the audience?
Mm, food, food has played a very big part in my life. And my biggest reflection over the last 2 years, especially when I'm serving the underprivileged, I really realized that food is also a nourishment for the soul and well-being, the mental well-being. Like if you eat a brownie, for example, it makes you happy. And therefore, at the food bank or any part of my life, and so if any one of you listening in, I'll also say, eat a cookie, right? Or eat something that makes you happy, right? Like indulge in that little piece of like snack that you may like. And that changes your day completely. At least that happens for me.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.